I'm going to go over the components you're going to get with your kit, but one thing you will have to purchase separately is a Blue Sea Mini Agm Battery kit. The part number for that is 7649. Now there are some other brands out there, but I designed this kit to work specifically with the Blue Sea kit, so I definitely recommend getting that one. If you buy something else, I can't guarantee it'll work. So what you're going to get is a genuine Yamaha battery tray with the pads and the straps. The reason I buy this and just give it to you guys as part of the kit is it just makes it a little bit easier for you. I'm not charging you any extra for this stuff. If you look online, you're going to pay between $55 and $65 for this stuff, depending on the shipping and just depending on the retailer you choose. It'll come with the pads. One of them will go on the side, and then these littler ones will go on these sides over here. The big one's going to go in the bottom, but you won't install that until after you've installed the box, because it's going to cover some of the bolt holes in the bottom, and it'll also get some straps. These aluminum bars are what's going to make it possible for you to mount the two batteries. One's going to be installed in front, one's going to be installed behind. They're going to mount in the jet ski just like this. They kind of mount at an angle like that, and those battery trays are going to mount in here, and I'll show you exactly how to install all of this stuff. And I apologize right now, this video is probably going to be upwards of 30 minutes or longer. I'll try to make it as simple as possible, but there's just a lot of steps to do this properly, and I want to make sure that you guys understand exactly what you're getting into and you don't have any problems installing it. You're going to get a little vial of blue Loctite, and this is genuine blue Loctite 242. I just put it in a smaller vial because it makes it cheaper for me to do, and so I can pass on the savings to you. You'll get some hardware. These 8 bolts here, stainless steel flange bolts. These are 1/4 thread. These are going to be the 8 bolts you're going to need for mounting the plastic trays to the aluminum bars. You'll get a 3/8 nut. I'll show you what you're going to do with that. You're going to get some 2.5 inch long 1024 bolts. Now the thread on this is 1024, so if you lose one of these nuts or washers and you got to go to the hardware store, you can pick up some more if need be. You'll get 4 more. These are going to be for adding or bolting on your fuse holders to your bulkhead, and then there's an extra one, and I'll show you what to do with that. You get plenty of nuts and washers, and I'll actually give you some extra ones because where you're going to have to be bolting this on, it's kind of hard to work. These nuts are small, and so you might accidentally drop some in your bilge, and you may or may not be able to get them back. I can guarantee you I've got some laying in the bottom of my bilge right now. You'll get 3 fuse holders, and these are waterproof. If you take the cap off, it's actually got a triple silicone seal right here. You're going to get 6 fuses in a little Ziploc bag. You're going to take 2 green fuses and a red fuse and put them in the Ziploc bag and keep this on your jet ski. Put it in your watertight compartment. That way you just have them as extras. You should never need them, but at least you'll have them. These 3 here you're going to use. I'll show you where to use them. You'll get 2 battery terminal boots for your house battery that you're going to add. You'll also get some cables. Now this is 6-gauge cable. And the reason it's 6 gauge is because the whole purpose of this kit is to give you redundancy for your start battery. So if for whatever reason, if your start battery ever fails out on the water, that dual battery switch that you're going to install, you just turn it to the combined position and it'll combine the 2 batteries, and you'll be able to start your jet ski using your house battery. A few tips on installing these aluminum bars. For installing this one here, you're going to use your factory brass nuts. For the shorter bar, you're going to have to swap out some bolts on your jet ski. There's 2 of them, 1 on each side. So the bolts you remove from your tray are going to look like this with a larger washer. Since we're no longer installing a plastic tray in that location, we don't need the larger washer. We can go with a smaller washer to hold these aluminum bars on. So, and I'll show you exactly where these bolts are. But this bolt here with the smaller washer is going to be underneath your seat in the very front. So remove it from both sides and install these in their place. And then the ones you remove from the seat, you're going to use here. Now for this counter bore here, the socket you need to use is going to have to be a 1/4 inch drive. If you try to use a 3/8 drive, the socket won't fit in here. It's a 10 millimeter, so just make sure you've got a 10 millimeter 1/4 inch drive socket, and that's what you'll use for tightening these bolts up. So looking at the side of my jet ski here, you can see that the seat's already been removed, and this bolt right here is the bolt that you're going to need to remove. Now, I've already swapped mine out, so this bolt here was originally holding my battery tray on. And so you notice that it's got that big washer on there. So this bolt is on both sides, so what you'll want to do is remove this bolt. It's got the smaller washer. You're going to use that one to install the aluminum bars, and then the bolt you remove from the battery tray you'll install here. When it comes to installing the plastic tray, These stainless steel bolts obviously are not magnetic, and you'll be working upside down, so they'll want to be falling out on you. So what you can do is get your nut driver or your ratchet and socket set and just put a piece of tape over the socket like that, and then just drive that bolt in there and that'll hold it for you. And then once you install it, you just pull it off, and then you can go to the next one and stick it in there, and that tape will keep holding the bolt in there for you. Oh, and these are going to be 3/8 socket. Now, something to point out with the factory mounting of the battery box. When there was only one, it wasn't too much of a problem, but what I'm about to explain may become a potential problem, and there's really nothing we can do about it. There's nothing I can do to the design of these bars to account for it. It's just the way it is, and I'll try and explain it here for you in a way that it makes sense. And if you do run into this problem, it's a real easy fix. So basically, you've got a liner that drops into the hull of the jet ski. So the material that you're seeing on the inside of your jet ski isn't the same stuff that's on the outside. It's two different pieces, and one sitting inside the other. Well, when they have that liner at the factory and they're installing all the little metal pieces and all the pieces that go into the assembly of the jet ski, there's some little brackets that they install from the bottom side of that liner, and then they rivet them on. And that's what these reliefs are on the back side here, is to make room for those rivets when these bars set down flat. So basically, they drop those, or they install those little brackets into the liner and they rivet them on. And I'll greatly exaggerate this so that you can see it on the camera. But when they install them, they may not be perfectly parallel. You know, one may be off just a little bit. Again, I'm greatly exaggerating it. So one will be off. Well, it isn't such a big deal when you're installing a small box onto that location. You can still make it go. Well, once you make this bar a lot longer, then the difference between here and here is, greatly increases. And so you try to install a box over here, it may bolt on. When you try to install one here, it may not bolt on. Again, it's because of the angle. And again, there's not a whole lot, or really anything that I can do about that as far as the design of these brackets go. I mean, I could make these holes bigger, but then, you just got sloppy holes, and if it's slopped the wrong way or slopped this way, it's not necessarily going to be right, or it's not necessarily going to make it to where this will line right up. So my suggestion is just go ahead and bolt these on as if, they're permanent. And I mean, they will be, but go ahead and tighten these up is what I'm saying. So then you'll get your box, and this is the back side over here, and you'll install the back one first. And this hole right here, this hole here is going to be the hardest one to see. You'll barely be able to see this hole. So I suggest you start with this one here. Once you get this one started, again, you don't want to tighten them up because you got to be able to move this a little bit. So get this one started, and then I suggest going over here, and then either one of these two. Now, if you get 3 of them in, and let's say you're doing this one last, and you look down in that hole and you can't see the hole in the bar, or you can only see half of the hole rather, then you can try and get both hands in the jet ski. It's really difficult to do, just depending on how broad your shoulders are. But I mean, you're going to have a little bit of a hard time installing this thing anyways, and that's just the way it is. It's just part of working in a small environment. So when this hole, or let's say that hole doesn't line up perfectly, you can try pushing it over or try driving that screw in there to make sure it gets started. But be careful about doing that. You definitely don't want to cross thread it. And that shouldn't happen, as long as you're not forcing it, which you really won't be able to do anyways because of the small confines that you're working in. But just try and get that last bolt started. Now, if it gets started, then go ahead and turn it in a few turns. But again, don't tighten these up yet. Then you want to move to the front one and do the exact same thing. You can just pick any one of them and try and get them all in. If you get them all in, then you're golden. Go ahead and tighten them all up. And then you're done with the installation as far as the battery boxes go. Everything worked out great for you. But let's say for some reason you get to this second box and one of the holes is off, and you can't try and persuade the box over and you can't make it line up. Then what I recommend you do is remove the box, and you'll get the drill bit that I include, and you'll put it in your drill. So what you can do is stick it in there and try and wallow it. And what you'll do is run the drill bit real fast, and then whichever direction that hole needed to go, if it needed to come this way, then you'll want to wallow out on this side. Now you shouldn't need to wallow out very much at all, so only do what's required. So just run it real fast and then push down, and you'll grind out some of that plastic, so to speak. If you've got a Dremel tool, that'll work well. If you've got a rat tail file, that'll also work. But when it comes to stuff like this, normally I just use a drill bit and a drill and it'll work fine. It's plastic. So if one of your holes doesn't line up, that's my recommended method for fixing it. The other way would be, let's say you're working on the second box, you've already got the first one installed over here. You'd have to remove both boxes, loosen up one of the bolts or all of them, see which way it needs to go, and you've got a little bit of slop in these bolt holes that go all the way through. And then you'll need to move the bar over just a little bit, you know, so that it's that way or whichever way it needs to go. And then you'll need to start with the installation over again. And that's a little bit more work. I haven't needed to do that for any of them that I've installed. What I'd recommend again is just go ahead and wallow out the hole just a little bit, and it shouldn't be more than a half hole off. One thing you'll need to do to your battery boxes, the new one you're going to get and your factory one, is see these little tabs right here? This is for holding the breather hose on the battery. You'll need to cut that off. You especially don't need it if you're using a Agm battery since it's sealed. But just get some little wire cutters or whatever you have handy and just cut that thing off like that. And it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. Just get it mostly off and that'll be good. The batteries are going to mount, or the trays rather, are going to mount like this. And so right here it's going to be real close to the bulkhead, and the negative post is going to be right here. And it's going to be a little tight to get into. And you know, I know that's, you know, unfortunate. I wish there was more room in there, but that's just kind of the way it is. You know, we've got a jet ski and we don't have a lot of room. And I move these batteries as far forward as possible, since we're kind of already overloading the back with the cooler rack and ice and fish and all that. So just to help with the weight transfer a little bit, I did move the batteries as far forward as possible. So you'll also need to cut this one off because it's going to be up against the bulkhead. And then this one here, that second battery is going to be right here. And so you need to have that one cut off. And then that second tray that's going to be here, you'll need to cut that one off as well. Your automatic bilge line is held onto the bulkhead via this little plastic fitting here. There's a aluminum rivet that holds this on, and so I drilled that out to remove this. So because you're going to need to move the bilge line over a little bit. So that's what the additional little screw is for. When you drill this rivet out, there's going to be a piece of aluminum rivet that's stuck in here. Just put it face down on the table and get something and knock that rivet out. It'll come out real easy. And then you can put this screw in there and find your location where you want to put this, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute in the video. And then you'll drill the bulkhead and reinstall this so you'll be able to attach your automatic bilge hose. Once you remove your seats, you're going to want to remove this rear seat support here. It takes a 12mm socket and combo. Also remove all of your exhaust, and also the factory battery and the factory battery tray. The next thing you want to do is unbolt your electrical box, and the first thing you do is there's a cover right here and then 2 latches. Take those 2 latches off, remove the cover, and then there's going to be 4 bolts, one here, one down here, and then the same thing on the other side. They'll be Loctite in, they'll be kind of tight. If you've got a small 3/8 drive impact, it'll come in real handy there. It's a 12mm socket. So then once you get that unbolted, you'll kind of pick it up, and you'll see 2 wires right here, 2 red ones. This first one right here is the one you want to take loose. It's a 10mm socket. So just pull that rubber back and then take this bolt out. After you get that bolt out, there's this little rubber boot on here. Just pull that off. And then remove this entire wire all the way back to where you disconnected it from the battery. And then you want to remove your engine coolant line right here. Just take this hose clamp loose, and then it runs through a hole down here. Take it out right there, and then just stuff it out of the way somewhere. And then this line here is your automatic bilge pump discharge, and it's going to be tie wrapped over here. Take the tie wrap loose, and then disconnect it, and then just fold both ends down out of the way. Now get one of your bars. And in this case, I've got the short one, so make sure you've got the other bolts that I told you to get. Apply some Loctite. Make sure that the bolts are towards the bottom. Run them all the way in by hand and then snug them up. Now with the long one, you'll want to reuse the factory brass nuts. Make sure you put some Loctite on those studs. And then reinstall and snug the nuts up. Now get both of your battery boxes, install those. There's one thing you're going to have to do with this ACR before you can use it. Right here on the ground side, if you look right here, there's these little pieces of plastic on both sides, and we're going to have to cut those off. And the reason for that is I'm using a flag terminal, which is a 90-degree terminal. And so the reason for that is this is going to go in here, and then when that cover goes on, that wire needs to come straight out. I mean straight down, versus coming out and then having to make a hard 90-degree bend down to go down. So I don't know why Blue Sea did this, but they put these extra little pieces of plastic here, and if you use a flag terminal with insulation on it, then it's not going to fit. If you can see right there, that flag terminal isn't getting full engagement on that spade. If I used a non-insulated terminal, it would work, but I don't want to use a non-insulated terminal. I'm trying to keep all the water out of this thing as we can. So what I recommend doing is just getting you some little bitty wire cutters, or whatever you have handy that'll work. And just reach in here on the ground side and just trim that plastic off right there. Probably, you know, a 1/4 inch down, 5/16 ought to be good. Just snap it off like that. And just keep trimming as need be. It shouldn't take very much. And then you'll just do a test fit on your ACR and that flag terminal to make sure it fits. So just put that little notch in there. However much you need to trim out. About a 1/4 inch should get it. Let's see what it looks like. Alright. So now that flag terminal is fully all the way down on the spade. It's got full engagement. You can see right there. And actually, I went about a 1/4 inch to about 5/16, and it didn't even need to be that far. So if you go a 1/4 inch, you're definitely going to have more than enough. So just do that before you get to the installation process of it. That way that flag terminal will go on there properly. Moving on to the installation of the ACR and the dual battery switch. So if you're in the jet ski looking at the back of the bulkhead, they're going to be installed just like this. So remove from the package. I want you to turn the switch to the off position and make sure it stays off throughout the installation. You won't turn it on until the very end after you've double checked everything. And so then just flip them over. Take the backs off. Now on this switch, it's going to have these removable side plates. And so you'll have 2 more side plates here. Just remove both of those, so you'll want 3 sides open. On the ACR, just the bottom is going to be open, and you don't need to remove any of the side plates. So remove all the nuts. Now it's very important that this switch stay oriented properly while we're hooking these wires up, because the way I'm going to tell you to hook them up is assuming that the off position is over here and you roll it just like this. So when you do that, you're going to have a 1 and a 1 and 2 and 2. So next thing you're going to do is get your longest red wire. Now you're going to get the loom that you removed from your factory battery positive cable and install it on this wire. It's the longest one. And then you're going to get that little boot that was by the starter relay, and you'll install it over the ring lug that has the smallest hole. You can see the difference in the hole there. And then you're going to get your shortest red wire and the other boot that you removed from your factory positive wire. You're going to install it over the smallest ring lug. Then you set those both aside. Then get all your fuse holders, and you want to get the 2 that have the ring lugs only on the end. Remove the covers, and you're going to install the 30 amp fuses, which are the green ones. So install those in both of them. Again, the ones with the ring lugs only, you're going to install the green fuses. The other one with a ring lug and a spade terminal, you're going to install the red fuse, which is the 10 amp. So now get one of your fuse holders that has the ring lugs only, and you're going to position it like this. The tab's going to be over here on your right. And it doesn't matter which one you hook it to, but I'll go to the left side first. So install that ring lug, put the nut on, and you want to tighten that up. That's a 7/16 socket. So after you've installed that one, you'll get the other fuse holder that has the ring lugs only. You'll get that smaller ring lug and install it on the other post. Then you'll get your other fuse holder that has a spade terminal. And you're going to install the spade on the ground terminal. Make sure it's engaged on that spade properly. So now that you've got all your wires on, you're ready to put your cover back on. You want to make sure these wires here are kind of close here in the middle. That way your cover will fit. Snap your cover on. Now moving on to your switch. Again, you want to make sure that off is over here, and then just flip it over so you've got 1, 1, 2, and 2. Then take one of your ring lugs, it doesn't matter which one. but you kind of want to play with the wiring so that it lays nicely. And you're going to install it on the top two. And then just put that nut on loose for now. Then you want to get your longest wire, okay? The longest one, that's the one that had the wire loom on it. And you're going to install it on this number 1 over here. Take one of your nuts, tighten it down. It's going to be a 9/16 socket. And you can see this little groove right here. You want this terminal about right at the edge of that groove. Not this one over here where this bolt is, but the next one over. So tighten that up. And then you'll get your other ring lug from your fuse holder. And you're going to install it on top right there. And then get that 3/8 nut that was supplied with your kit. And tighten that down. And the reason I supply this additional nut is because when I've got a heavy lug like I've got here on this battery cable, I don't like putting these small ones underneath there if I can prevent it. So that's why that additional nut is there. Moving on to the next post, you'll grab your shortest red wire. That's the one you put the other boot on. And you'll install it on the bottom number 1. Get the remaining red wire. Install it on the remaining post. Okay, so just to review everything. The fuse holder that has the spade terminal, that's going to go on the ground terminal here. Your 2 fuse holders that have the 30 amp fuses and only have the ring lugs on the end, they're going to go on your 2 posts for your ACR. It doesn't matter which one goes where. Then you'll grab either one of them, and it's just up to you how you want to route the wiring. You'll grab one of them and you'll go to number 2 on top. You'll grab the other ring lug and you'll go to number 1. And that number 1 is the same number 1 as your cable that's going to go to your start relay. And then on this bottom number 1, it's going to be your shortest wire that has also the boot on it. This is going to go to your start battery. The other number 2 here is going to be your medium length red wire, and this is going to go to your house battery. So after you've checked all that and you've made sure all that is good, you can put your cover on your ACR. Now before you can put this red cover on, you need to go ahead and hook up your electronics or hook up a power wire that's going to go to your power distribution block if you have one, or a power post that you've got mounted somewhere. Because once this is all bolted on, you can't access this anymore without removing your electrical box and then taking these 4 screws off that are going to mount it on. So basically, if you bought a GPS, it's most likely going to come with a fuse holder and it's just going to have a bare wire on the end. So you'll take that ring lug that I included and the shrink wrap, and you'll install it over the wire, and then crimp this ring lug on there, and then you'll install it right here. And so what this is going to be is this is where all of your loads are going to come from for your accessories on the jet ski. So after you've installed this, whatever it may be, whether it be a fuse holder or just another piece of wire that goes over to a power post, once you've got that ring lug on, then you're going to want to install that nut. And you want these 2 wires going opposite from each other. Again, because you've got your little open windows here, we're going to leave it covered on top just to protect it from some water. And so you want to make sure all your wires are lined up just right so that this cover can go on. And this is still loose, but just to demonstrate, you don't want it bound up against the side right here. You want it in the air right there. You don't want it way over here against this post. So just tighten it up so that this wire is here. And also the exact same thing on the other side. You just want your wire coming out right here in the middle. Now you don't need to worry so much, about the potential of these wires touching and eating through the insulation and the heat shrink, because these are all positive wires anyways. You're not going to necessarily short something out. Yes, you do want to keep some separation, but it's okay if they're a little close. So once you've got all your wires installed, then just put your cover on and you're ready to install it in the jet ski. This black ring lug on the fuse holder, this is going to go to your negative power post or terminal block if you have one, or your start battery negative post. There's a rubber hose right here, and that's where your pump shaft goes through. That's the center line of the jet ski pretty much. And so you want to mount those switches about center line or just over this way a little bit towards the batteries. Now you want to take your switch, your wires, and your ACR, and you want to drop it down in your jet ski. And you want to take the longest red wire, the one that you just installed the wire loom on, and you want to run it back to where it was connected to the starter relay. So once you've run your new wire all the way back to the starter relay, you want to bolt it back on. After you've snugged that up real good, reinstall your rubber boot. Alright, as you can see, I've already had mine installed once already. But what you can do is either draw directly on your jet ski, or if you don't want to draw on your jet ski, put a piece of painter's tape down here. And from the top of the bulkhead up here, you can put a square, or you can eyeball it. Use a square if you want it perfectly straight. And just draw your line down through there. And then on that line, from the top of the bulkhead down to the top of the switch is going to go right here. To the top of the switch is going to be around 6 inches. You can go a little lower than that, but I wouldn't go much higher than that. So about 6 inches right here, that's going to be the top of the switch. And then from the top of the switch here to the bottom of the ACR here, you want about 2 1/4, 2.5 inches. And your ACR is going to mount right there. So what you want to do is take the drill and drill bit, and you're going to mark the hole using the drill. It's just easier that way. You'll just run the drill for about 5 seconds and it'll put a mark there, and then you can remove the switch and drill all the way through. So put your switch up, drill, mark a hole, remove the switch, drill all the way through. Once you've drilled all the way through, you'll put a screw in it, and then you'll mark the other one on the opposite corner. Just mark it, remove it, drill it all the way through. Once you've drilled it all the way through, you put a bolt in that one, and then mark these two, remove again, drill all the way through. Then you can permanently install the switch. You'll do the exact same thing for the ACR. Put the ACR up there, mark the screw, remove it, drill it, install the screw, and then do the exact same process till you get them all drilled. And once you get your switch and your ACR permanently installed, you have to do something with these fuses. So this is where I chose to mount mine. They're just kind of over here off to the side a little bit. And so just hold those fuses somewhere where you want them in this area, and just mark your holes, drill through, and install your fuse holders. And then you'll do the same thing for the ground for the ACR. I'll put mine over here on this side because this lead here is going to have to go to the negative terminal of the battery right here. See this little plastic piece here? And what that was the bilge hose holder. And so the way I remove that is coming from the other side, the opposite side right here, there's going to be an aluminum rivet holding this on. And so coming from the opposite side, stick a drill on that rivet. You can use the same drill that you use to drill these holes, and you want to drill that rivet out. You may have to pull up on it like this to keep the rivet from spinning. So what I did was go from the other side, just put the drill on that rivet, and then hold up on it, and that kept the rivet from spinning in the hole. Once the head of that rivet gets drilled out, you can remove the entire thing. Find where you want to mount this, and this is where your hose is going to get mounted. So now that you've got all that mounted, you can take your bilge hose, reconnect it, make sure you move your clamp over, put a tie wrap right here to hold your bilge hose, and then this wire can either go behind it or in front of it. In my case, I'm going to put it behind it. Oh, and another thing, before you mount these fuses, it may be a good idea to go ahead and set up your bilge hose. That way you kind of get an idea where you want to put them. You don't want to put these fuses right behind here. I tried putting them up here. They got in the way, so I think in this area right here is the best location. Just make sure you give yourself some room that you can get them out, you know. Then once you get them out, it's easy to access. So you've got enough room on your pigtails. Just play with it, see where you want to mount them. Make sure you've got room to unplug them both. Okay, now that you've got your bilge hose set up, your switches are mounted, now it's time to hook up your batteries. Again, make sure your switch is off. And you want to make sure you've got this all hooked up properly before you turn the switch on for the first time. So this wire here coming out that has the wire loom on it, that went to your starter relay, that's already hooked up. this bottom wire, the wire coming out of the bottom of the switch, is going to go to your start battery. The wire coming out over here, it's going to go to your house battery. So after you get those hooked up, make sure you hook your negative to negative for your batteries. After you hook up your batteries, you'll need to hook your cooling hose back up, the discharge from the engine. Now you can see this hole over here. This is where the cooling line used to run. It won't be able to go there no more because of the battery is going to be in the way. But that's okay. It will come up here on top of the bulkhead. There's plenty of room here. And so just run your hose back on top of the bulkhead, hook it back up, and make sure to hook your clamp back up. And then just bolt everything back up and just make sure you double check all your work. Make sure your wires are hooked up properly. Make sure that your bilge hose is hooked up. Make sure that your engine coolant line is hooked up. Make sure that the electrical box is bolted back on. Make sure that all the screws here are tight. That pretty much covers the installation. Again, just make sure you check all your stuff before you turn that switch on. And then when you're ready, go ahead and turn that switch on and try and start the ski. And definitely do that before you get the electrical box back on, before you get all the exhaust on. That way, if there's any problem at all, you'll catch it before you put all that stuff back on. So if you're anything like me, you're probably leery of buying stuff from guys on the internet, that you've never met, or you don't know if what they're selling is really worth what they're asking for it. And, if you've seen what I'm going to ask for this, then most likely, I'm sure you're probably thinking, man, I can do that for a lot less. And you know what? You're right. You can do it for a lot less. But one thing that's a little bit different with this kit is that I've tried to use the absolute best stuff that I could get. This is the exact same stuff or setup that I have on my jet ski, so I'm depending on it when I'm offshore. Take, for example, these fuse holders. These are made by Delphi, and, there's 3 of them in the kit, and they're like $6.50 a piece. So, once you buy these things, and I'm not a dealer, I'm paying full retail for these things. I'm having to pay tax on it. So just these 3 fuse holders, I'm paying like 20 bucks, the Yamaha stuff. That's all factory Yamaha stuff. And it's costing me somewhere around $50-something, for those kits. And so I'm not marking anything up. I am charging a little bit for my time. I'm obviously charging you for all the materials. But, I'm a jet ski fisher myself, and I know there's not a lot of stuff out there on the market for us. So when I develop something for my jet ski, if it's something easy that I can turn around, then I'll offer it to you guys as well. Take, for example, this transducer bracket. I know I've sold a lot of you guys these transducer brackets. If you've never seen them before, then you can check out some of my other videos. And this is just a transducer bracket that you mount on the back of the jet ski. It fits the VXs and the FXs, and it allows you to mount your transducer. So if you've got one of these and you're happy with it, then you can expect to get the same kind of quality with this kit here. Obviously, it's going to cost quite a bit more, and really when I first started pricing it all out, I was like, man, that's too much. I just can't charge that much, but that's just what it costs, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. That's, fishing on a jet ski is cheaper than owning a boat, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's cheap. Moving on to the battery cables, if you've ever made wires, and you're probably concerned about that as well, how am I making them? So I've got a ratchet crimper, and this die right here is actually for the flag terminals that I use. I use an actual flag crimper for these. All the other ones, I use the appropriate crimpers as well, and I heat shrink them with a heat gun. I don't use a flame, so none of the insulation is burned or anything like that. Moving on to the battery cables themselves, like I probably mentioned already, they're 6 gauge. So that means you're going to be able to start your jet ski from the second battery absolutely no problem. The heat shrink that I use, here's a used piece. I'll see if you can, I'll try and get this close. See that little bit of clear stuff right there? That's actual adhesive. This heat shrink that I use has an adhesive on the inside, and so when I heat it on there and I shrink it, that adhesive oozes out both sides, and that helps, keep the heat shrink on there, and it helps seal the connection as well to keep water out. The little terminals that I use, they're pure copper and they're tin coated, as well as the wire. The wire is marine wire. You price this stuff out, you're gonna pay over $1 a foot for it. The kit has like 9 feet, I believe. There's actually a lot more wire in there than you think. These connections, or these terminals, are hydraulically crimped. I don't use one of them little cheap things on the concrete with a hammer and you beat on it and you try and drive a punch in there. These are hydraulically crimped. They will not come apart. And the reason I don't like solder on a high amperage cable is because this cable should never get hot. But if it ever does, the last thing I want is for that solder to be melting and the wire come out. So if you read the instructions that came with your ACR and the dual battery switch, you'll notice that I don't have it wired up like they tell you to. What they tell you to do is to hook a switch into this ground lead over here. And the reason for that is so that you can flip that switch off and it'll turn the ACR off. That way it's not drawing down your batteries while you're not using your jet ski. Well, instead of switching the negative side, I decided to switch the positive side. I even called Blue Seas to ask them about it to make sure it was okay. And they said, of course it is. It's actually what they refer to as load side switching. So I don't know why they don't include this method in the instructions. They have you install a switch over here. Well, we've already got a switch here. So we're going to make use of this switch to turn off the ACR. So on this middle post, again, this is 1 and 1 here and 2 and 2. So on this post here, this number 1 post, this is hooked to our start battery. So there's always 12 volts here. This post here is hooked to our house battery. There's always 12 volts here. And right now the switch is in off. And so if this was hooked up, when it's off, there's no voltage here. So the ACR would be off. Now when you turn it on to the on position, these two terminals here will connect together. And so you've got a path for the electricity to flow. And so you'll have power going to the ACR from both sides. Then the ACR can do its job. Now if you've got a battery tender, just hook it to one of your batteries. It doesn't matter which ones, but let's say you hook your battery tender to your start battery. If you have this in the off position while your jet ski is parked and you've got your battery tender on, then only your start battery is going to be maintained. So to be able to maintain both batteries, if you've got a battery tender hooked up, then you need to have this switch in the on position. That way the ACR has power and it can do its job of maintaining both batteries. But let's say it's during the summer and you're riding your jet ski, every other weekend or so. You don't necessarily need to hook your battery tender up provided you've got good batteries. So in that case, you'd want to turn this to the off position so your ACR isn't draining down your batteries while it's parked. Alright guys, I'm almost done running my mouth. One of the other common questions that gets asked, is about the batteries. What brand is the best brand or how often to replace it? And probably one of the better brands, there's several good brands out there. Odyssey is definitely a good brand. You pretty much got to buy them online. At least for me personally in my local area, I hardly ever see them in a store shelf somewhere. What I use is Walmart batteries. Y'all might laugh about that, and that's fine. The EverStart Premium Agm batteries, I definitely recommend Agm batteries. They're completely sealed. They're absorbed glass matte. They're definitely a better battery, so you won't have any problems with fluid leaking out, acid leaking out, or the level dropping and you having to maintain the level in your battery. And if you are using a liquid filled battery, that you can check the level in, then that's something you definitely need to be doing. At least once a year you need to check that fluid level, because that fluid level, especially on a jet ski with all that moving around, that level will drop, and if it drops and your cells get exposed, your battery is pretty much numbered. Its days are numbered. It's going to get toast. Yuasa batteries are a real common battery in motorcycles and in the jet skis. I personally, I've had a lot of jet skis and four-wheelers and motorcycles. I've gone through my fair share of Yuasa batteries. One thing what I like about the Walmart batteries is Walmart's open 24/7. So if my battery dies for whatever reason, early in the morning when I'm about to head out to go fishing, or in the middle of the night, the day before I go fishing, I'm getting my gear ready, and my battery's weak for whatever reason, then I run to the store and get a replacement, immediately. And that's one of the other good things about the AGMs is that when you get it off the shelf, it's charged, it's ready to go. You can install it and go. With the lead acid batteries that you got to fill yourselves, if you've got a dead battery and you got to go buy a battery and you buy one of those, then you're looking at about 12 hours before you can use that battery at least. And one of the other questions that gets asked a lot is how often do you replace them? Well, since you're going offshore, you definitely want to be on top of your battery maintenance, And one of the things that I definitely highly recommend, and it isn't just for jet ski batteries, but man, you can use it for everything you own that has a battery in it, is a load tester. And this is different from a voltmeter. A voltmeter will just tell you how many volts the battery has. A load tester will tell you how many volts, and it will actually load test it. Now this one here, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it in several different places. This is made by OTC. It looks like the model number is 3180. and it's a 130 amp load tester. And so what you do is the instructions for this tell you to hold the switch. You've got a switch right here, and you hold the switch between 10 and 15 seconds, you know. And so, like I mentioned, you can use this for all your vehicles. So like if winter's coming up and you know you want to test your car battery or your wife's car battery to make sure it's going to get through the winter and not leave you stranded somewhere, you hook this sucker up with your vehicle off. You hold that switch down, and it's going to tell you right here on the gauge, you know, whether you've got a good battery or not. And that's something that a voltmeter can't tell you, because you can have what appears to be a good battery. You hook that voltmeter on there, and it shows you, you know, 12.5 volts at rest. But then as soon as you put a load to it, hit the starter or whatever, that voltage will immediately drop off so fast, and then it won't recover. And in that case, you've got a dead battery, you've got a dead cell in your battery. And so that's where a load tester is going to help you out. And so I hope you'll be able to see this. So there's a little needle right here. I hope you can see it on the camera. And so, you know, we're reading pretty high. This is a new battery, so it's almost at, you know, 13 volts. And actually, you see right here where it says good, and then we're over here in the low, because see right here it actually says charging system. So if you hook this up to your vehicle while it's running, then if it's running and you're over here, then your charging system is weak. Your charging system should be around the 15 volt mark for any vehicle pretty much. And then over here in the red, that means you're overcharging a little bit. So we should be over here. That's the good range for a battery on the bench or the engine off. So we're definitely way above good. We're almost 13 volts. So I'm going to hit the switch now. And so basically what this is a big resistor. It's got a little heating coil in the back, and that thing's going to get hot and it'll get glowing, and I'll show it to you in a minute. So hitting the switch now. So the voltage immediately dropped to about 10.9 volts. And we'll just hold it for a little while. Alright, I've held it for definitely longer than I need to. See how it's glowing in the back? See how it's red in there? That's how them coils got real hot. So now we'll flip it back over and we'll see where it's at. So we're still reading about 12.8. So it was almost 13, and right now it's actually more like 12.6, sorry. So we were about 12.8, and now we're about 12.6. I think I misspoke there a minute ago. But so this is a load tester, and that's what you do. So this is a new battery, and clearly we definitely know we've got a good battery, because I just loaded the crap out of it a lot longer than I needed to, and it came right on back. And that's what you should see with a car battery, any battery. So as far as how long or how often to replace these batteries, what I do is at the beginning of every season, I hook the load tester up to it and I see what it does. And even if this, like I mentioned, you know, if it's reading like 12.6, 12.8, and then when I hit this button for 10 seconds, if it doesn't recover, or if it immediately drops way down here, man, it is toast. If it drops down into the weak spot, then you know what? You might not want to risk it. Now, if it's for your four-wheeler, where it ain't no big deal if it doesn't start on you, if you're in the weak area, you'll probably be okay. On my offshore fishing jet ski, man, I want that to recover. So if it's over here in the weak area any, or drops down any, I'm going to replace the battery. And so that's what I do. It just depends on the batteries, on how long they last. Like I said, those factory batteries, you know, they won't last near as long in my opinion, or I haven't been lucky with them. The Agm batteries are definitely better. The Odyssey and some other brands are some of the premium brands, you know. And like I said, I like these Walmart batteries because I get a good life out of them, and I can get them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the most part. And so that's important to me. And you know, it just depends on what's important to you. A few more little tricks and tips with these batteries. I think I just got one more for you. So you notice I've got the bolts and the nuts in here already. If you've ever jacked with these batteries, you know how much of a pain in the ass these nuts can be. Those suckers will fall out on you. They'll fall down at the bottom of the jet ski, or they'll fall down in your four-wheeler or whatever, and then you can't find them again. So what I do is, before I install the battery, I put the nut in and I put that bolt in there. And you can use, I'm going to use hot glue. You can use hot glue if you have a hot glue gun. You can use silicone. You can use some marine goop, just anything that you can put in there. And so what I'm going to do is get my hot glue gun, and I'm just going to pump some hot glue in there. And it doesn't take very much. And I'll just pump that hot glue in there, let it dry or let it cool. And so once it cools, What it's going to do is when I take the bolt out, it's going to hold that nut in place for me and it won't fall out. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, well, what if it gets hot for some reason? Well, you know, if this terminal ever gets hot, that glue melting is the least of my concerns. So that's just another tip for you. I hope I covered everything. If you guys got any questions, just hit me up. I know it's been an extremely long video and you're probably tired of hearing me talk, but I just wanted to make sure I covered everything. And good luck, guys. See you out there.